China really is being isolated and crushed by the US tariffs. Now, just to recap what's happened so far, initially the United States placed 10% tariffs on China, then upped that by another 10%. That was in February and March, so 20% tariffs. By April 2nd, Liberation Day, as Donald Trump called it, the United States placed further tariffs on China, 34%, I believe, which brought it up to 54%. After that, China retaliated with 34% tariffs. The United States added another 50% tariffs to China. China retaliated and added 50%, I believe, as well, and brought it up to 84% on the United States. Then the United States raised the tariffs to 125%, and eventually 145%, and then 245%, or something along those lines. China raised their tariffs on the United States to 125%. That said, all the other countries that the United States placed tariffs on have essentially come to the United States to negotiate some sort of trade deal. So the United States has paused tariffs on all other countries. In the meantime, with China, it's quite a different story. They retaliated. They weren't looking to negotiate. There are top-level talks between the United States and China, but there's nothing serious as far as negotiation is concerned right now anyway. But we've learned this week, just seeing the media coming out of Southeast Asia from the various newspapers, the Straits Times, the South China Morning Post, and various other papers around East Asia, in addition to social media, what we're seeing in social media is the export trade in China is absolutely collapsing. The container bookings in China are down 60%, and that's just happened within a couple of weeks. Container bookings have dropped 60%. Now you might think, well, the United States is going to be hurt by this as well. Somewhat perhaps, but a lot of what was being shipped from China is being ramped up in other countries, especially the ASEAN countries. This week, Xi Jinping went on kind of a solidarity tour and publicity tour around Vietnam, Cambodia, and Malaysia. These are ASEAN countries. They're in a trade alliance called ASEAN that China also deals with in their China Plus One policy, which is China's way of pushing exports through third-party countries. Now, it does this with some processing that occurs in these other countries. However, over time, these countries have built up their own industries where they're doing more and more of the work within the country themselves. So like Vietnam, for example, is doing more and more with electronics. So a lot more electronics production is happening in Vietnam. They also do apparel and clothing and shoes and other things, plenty of other industries as well. But a main industry that has been developing in recent years is electronics. The same with Malaysia, Cambodia. The thing is, though, these countries are all having their tariffs paused by the United States, and they're all engaging in trade talks with the United States because they have their own interests. Obviously, they will entertain China. China's their big, powerful neighbor, and they'll cooperate with China, but they're going to try and take as much of that business from China as they possibly can. And that's what looks like is actually happening right now, is these countries are taking a lot of the trade that China previously had from China with the United States, and that will probably continue. So you even get headlines like this out of the South China Morning Post. ASEAN's illusion of solidarity splinters amid Trump's tariff threats. And that's because all of these countries are looking out for their own interests. They're all competing for bilateral trade deals with the United States, and they're looking to bring down a lot of the tariff barriers because they're all completely addicted to trade with the United States. For example, Vietnam's economy exports 30% of Vietnam's economy is exports to the United States. So they are incredibly dependent on the United States, and we don't export that much to them. I believe it's something like a 10 to 1 ratio. They export 10 times as much to the United States as we export to them. So countries like Vietnam are utterly dependent on the United States for their economic well-being. Then we have headlines like this. Hit by Trump's tariffs, China's chip traders decry no point in working as orders tank. One of the world's largest electronic markets shows how fast the supply chain was upended by the tariff escalation with Washington. So these industries in China, entire supply chains are really hurting. And while the getting is good, you have some of these ASEAN countries scooping up what they can. Now, eventually, the goal is to relocate a lot of these industries back to the United States. Yes, even the electronics industries back to the United States. Now, this isn't going to involve, when these industries go back to the United States, it's not going to involve lines of people working on tiny assembly line jobs or assembling phones or computers or other devices like that. Most of this production will be automated. There will be people in the factories, just much fewer people, say like 1/10 the number of people that you would have in a factory today, or even less than that. So there will be jobs, and those will be industries that come back to the United States, but they won't look anything like the way they do now. They won't have nearly the number of people, but there will be a number of workers there, and those workers, because there are so many fewer workers in these factories of the future, factories that will be built in America, the wages will be much higher than they are today. Oh, another little pain point regarding China are Shein and Temu. Now, they're affected by a somewhat different matter. They're probably affected by tariffs as well. However, the main thing affecting them is the elimination of what's called the de minimis rule, which allowed Shein and Temu to send packages, individual packages, to the United States if their value is under $800 without any kind of duty at all. And this is actually a big problem for American companies that import Chinese products and sell them in the United States, because they do have to pay duty on those products when they come in via container. So this was a loophole, essentially giving Chinese companies directly on the mainland of China an advantage over companies located in the United States in selling to U.S. consumers. So this loophole is going to end May 2nd, and Temu and Shein have already been lowering their advertising in the United States, and they're probably going to face devastating losses because of this. Another interesting phenomenon are Chinese companies appealing directly to American consumers over the TikTok app. And this is mainly for luxury brands, luxury apparel, and clothing. A lot of it under the label of that are owned by LVMH and Hermes, and mainly European brands. Now, I don't know if this is just desperation of the factories making this, if they truly are the contract manufacturers for these luxury brands. But either way, these companies are desperate, and they're trying to drum up business from the United States. Even though this isn't really punishing the United States, it's punishing the mostly European brands that they seem to be promoting.
$1, ladies. Too many stock, no choice. This worker working for me 8 years. She know how to sort the goods. Now Mr. Ross only want to collect my investment back. We can sell small quantities, no problem. Final ready package, lady jeans. This one, 40 kilo, contains 80 pieces. You come buy 50 package. Mr. Ross can deliver it to your agent warehouse. Follow Ross and message me privately. Waiting for you in Guangzhou, Huadu.
So we can see that the pressure on China is only going to increase. The longer they wait, the more factories are going to shut down, the longer their ports are going to be shut down, and they'll begin to really feel it in their economy. The other thing is, a lot of these other countries are going to start taking some of China's share in exports to the United States. And once a lot of that share moves to these third-party countries, especially you could think of the ASEAN countries, it's not going to go back to China. It's going to stay with those countries. So China's going to be under a lot of pressure to really begin negotiations with the United States and get some kind of trade deal going. If China does not negotiate some sort of trade deal with the United States, it is going to be absolutely catastrophic for China. So this is a topic I'm going to continue to make videos on. And if you're interested in this topic, please subscribe to my channel. And if you liked what I had to say, please give me a like.